Serious, what is your hometown horror story? A dad who climbed in his car to go to work and reversed over his daughter and killed her. She was 5 and playing hide and seek under his car with her older brother who saw it happen. Unspeakably tragic. This happened to a woman down the street with her very young daughter too. About 15 years ago. She was kind but seemed not all the way there after that. Her husband found her hanging in the shed in the backyard last summer. They had other kids too. I feel awful for the whole family. My town has a really nice park right next to the train tracks with a stage that if you are sitting looking towards the stage from the audience you're looking right at the train tracks. During an annual talent show, a dude committed suicide by train in front of a few hundred people. Guess he wanted a show. I was riding a train earlier and noticed signs for the mental health emergency line all along the track. It's good that they are trying a bit, at least. Cop killed his wife in the bathtub. Cop's next wife goes missing, never to be heard about again. I bet someone reading this can guess who I am talking about. Bolingbrook is also my hometown. A bit weird, but it revolved around my family actually. I come from a very small town in Northern California, population of about 3,000, where not much really happens other than gossip, and probably a bit of inbreeding. Back in the early 80s, a couple years before I was born, my uncle was out in the woods with his girlfriend. This area was relatively close to the high school, and it is where teenagers went to make out, smoke pot, and bang. A guy came up to my uncle's car, shot him a couple of times and raped his girlfriend. My uncle died, and the girl came back to tell her tale and get help. It's impacted my grandparents greatly, and I can still see the pain in their eyes around Christmas. He was killed in December. It threw my dad in a bit of a self-destructive nosedive, hence my birth, and the town didn't really recover for a while. They never found the guy, but they did have someone stand trial at one point. DNA evidence came back inconclusive, or something. The saddest thing I've ever heard was when my grandpa told me that no matter how many people we have over, or how full the house is, there is always one person missing. And there always will be. No matter how many people we have over, or how full the house is, there is always one person missing. And there always will be. This is so sad. How awful for your whole family. I'm so sorry for your loss. 15 years ago, a guy, my mother's childhood friend, murdered his aunt with an axe, took all her intestines out and put them in a bag, which was found hanging from the ceiling fan. Mexican here. In the 17th of September of 1998, at 3:40 am, a commando of Sicarios enter a small ranch in El Zorzal, municipality of Ensenada in Baja California. There were 3 houses interconnected by each other at the ranch, and the commando divided their men to enter each of the houses. They shot a 12-year-old that his only mistake was to open the door. One by one they raided Las Casas, until they found their guy, a rural teacher that went bad and was now in the drug business. They killed him at the spot. The rest of family and neighbors, 19 to be exact, was put against the floor. What do we do with them? A Sicario asked. The only thing we can do, kill them all, and so they did. They shot a 8-month baby, a pregnant girl, an abuelita, the sister, the brother, the innocent. I would say that is the worst thing that has happened in my town. Between this one and the other one from a Mexican town that I've read so far, I think you two have way more than twice the body count of every other comment I've read thus far in this thread. A 12-year-old girl, very self-conscious, used MySpace frequently and found a guy she didn't know personally, who showed interest in her. The guy talked with her and built this relationship with her over the course of a few months, and then, out of nowhere, he became very hostile and said the most disgusting things to her. Turns out, the guy was really her best friend's mom. The girl ended up committing suicide, and it wasn't found out that the MySpace guy was her friend's mom until a couple months following her death. From what I can remember, the mother and the daughter behind the MySpace postings felt little to no remorse, or at least showed none, and moved away. They weren't punished at all, as there were no cyberbullying laws in place at that time. It was probably the first real incident of cyberbullying, and it sparked a lot of media legislation. It's a fairly well-known story. There's an ABC Family movie based on it. Megan's parents are very loud activists for anti-bullying legislation now. I just don't understand how someone can be as heartless as the woman who bullied Megan. It's a big city so there are many, but the one that stuck with me so much was the story of a woman who lost her husband. Prior to that she lost her 2 kids to a car accident, and then her husband died from cancer. When he died, and on the last night of the funeral, people said she had the coffin laid on her bed where she slept beside it for the whole night. That one struck me as a kid because it actually happened. A friend was a neighbor of the woman. That's actually pretty sad. Some bloke was found at the roadside with his willy chopped off. Apparently he'd been banging some gypsy's wife. After some investigation it turns out the gypsies got the wrong guy. Growing up I remember kids talking about the girl who killed her parents and tried to burn them. It was a persistent story but I didn't take it seriously until my mom pointed out the house it happened in and just said the same thing. The girl killed both her parents and tried to burn them in the garage. In high school, one of the teachers told us more. He was the only person with a decent camera in the county so he was put in charge of taking the crime scene photos. However, it was so cold that his camera froze up. The local sheriff had him pretend to shoot a couple of rolls while the state police were around and retake the real pictures when it was warmer. He told us the girl and her sister were sexually abused by their father and their mother let it happen. One night she stabbed them with scissors and dragged them to the garage. She tried to cover it up by lighting them on fire, but the only flammable thing she had was perfume and just managed to burn some of the clothing. I did some internet searching and got some more details from my mother, like the girl's name. She knew that the girl was taken to a mental hospital and raped by a staff member and got pregnant. I was able to find out that she went on to get cleared of murder charges with a temporary insanity plea and was released a few years later. Jesus. As if being raped back home wasn't enough, it follows her to the hospital. A fellow in my high school class knocked up his girlfriend. His parents murdered her and stuffed her in the trunk of their car. They abandoned the car. Why they never figured that the police could trace the vehicle is beyond me. I can't imagine what that guy must think of his parents. I am from Springfield, Illinois, and it was the site of the first Northern race riot. Young blacks were impaled on fences. It was such a terrible thing to happen. This guy I used to be sort of friends with in high school decapitated his girlfriend, cut out her uterus, ate the uterus, and wrapped her head in a plastic bag and put it in the lagoon near my house. He did it to bring about the apocalypse, or at least, that was his reasoning. Then afterwards when he was in jail awaiting trial he tried to act like he was insane, saying the sheriff was his dad and was writing him letters like, "Hey, Dad, when do I get out?" I remember right around the time of his trial I was in the transport van going back to jail. I was there for possession of Lortab clean for years now, and he was asking about the rehab I was being sent to because he was there when they read out my sentence. It was creepy as frick having him striking up a conversation like it was nothing. Yeesh. Thank God I'm a girl and they had him shackled the frick up and away from pretty much everyone, especially the women. Anyone aged 25 and up from my hometown will remember the last escape from the local mental hospital. It's really a prison for the criminally insane, but they don't call it that anymore. It's where the real nasty bastards go. When there's an escape, huge air raid style sirens blare out through the local woodland. Everywhere goes into lockdown, and police do checkpoints everywhere. It's freaking terrifying. A sophomore from my sister's high school went missing around a month ago. Her mother was in a relationship with an abusive Chicano, with plans to file for divorce and to move down south with their family. The mother and daughter thought everything would be over soon. Girl doesn't show up to school for a few days and her classmates just assume that she's sick. I'm sure her friends texted her, but those details are unclear to me. All I know is that the neighbor smelled something bad and had the police investigate the girl's house. Police find the girl and her mother bludgeoned to death and rotting away. Murder weapon was a hammer and the boyfriend did it. Psycho just left them there. Craziest thing that haunts me is thinking about who had to go first and had to watch the other go down with a hammer being beaten to a bloody pulp themselves. Guy's in jail now and I hope he rots there. I've heard the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is often when someone tries to leave. This is very sad. Guy brought his wife and 2 children to where he worked, a foundry. He went to show them a smelting chamber, then locked them in, and turned it on. Dude, what? About 4 years ago, 2 foster kids murdered their foster parents and then ran away after looting the house. They were caught and one was sentenced to life and the other got off easier since he was just young and apparently only drove the getaway car. The parents were well-liked people around the community, so many people were devastated. Dude in my first grade class was riding a motorcycle with his stepfather. They ran into the side of a train and died on impact. The house they lived in was a very creepy looking old house. After their passing, someone else started renting it. About a year or 2 later, a kid went missing. He was found dead at the same old creepy house. The new tenant was dating the kid's mom, took him and murdered him. House is still there. No way in heck I'd go in. A man this year murdered a woman in a town near to where I live, cut the body into pieces, flushed some down a toilet and scattered the rest randomly a mile or so away from his house. Crap was fricked. Friend of mine told something similar. She works as a lawyer and got a call to visit her boss who was at an apartment building. The murder flushed the bones down the toilet. Unfortunately it clogged and he called the janitor. The phrase "Sweet Fanny Adams" comes from my hometown. In the late 1800s, a little girl was brutally butchered, and I mean brutal. He pulled out her eyes and her internal organs were found strewn out over a field. Her grave is still in the town cemetery and people leave flowers on it regularly and keep it looking nice. There's a Wikipedia page on it, but I don't know how to post the link on mobile. Sorry. Wichita, KS. 70s serial killer called BTK. Bind, torture, kill. Took 30 years to catch, and was sort of a local boogeyman. Man, the entire town must have been terrified when BTK was rampaging. Later on, that sick bastard was even installing security systems in people's homes, getting off on the deception. He thought he was invincible, but the stupid bastard sent the police a floppy disk that had data linking to his own name. He preyed on people's fears. He deserves to rot in prison forever. A girl's family made some people mad. They considered themselves a low-class mob, so the girl goes missing. A week later she turns up, in pieces. They cut her head off and tossed her top jawbone in one family member's yard and her bottom jaw in another. Also another story. It was Halloween. A guy was sitting on a stoop passing out candy dressed as a samurai with a katana strapped to his back. People kept commenting on the realistic decorations of his house, particularly the severed head sitting next to him. It took a while, but eventually people realized the head was real and it was his mother's. John Bennett Ramsey's murder was our most notorious. In my lifetime anyway. Nearby, and only a handful of years later, Columbine. Are we talking about horrifying things that happened in our hometown? The only one I can think of is a woman murdered her elderly mother a few streets down from me a few years ago. She pushed her down the stairs, threw a TV on top of her, and then threw food and trash on her. That was pretty fricked. When I was in middle school, we had career day where parents came in and everything. This fireman talked about how he responded to a call when a girl hit a guardrail. Apparently he was the first responder on the scene, and as he went to pick up the driver from where she was sitting, her head just fell off. Or at least, that's what he told my class of 12-13-year-olds back about 7 years ago now. Other than that, my town was boring. That's one way to get kids to wear seatbelts. The other way is saying, hey kids, I'm not gonna traumatize you with a gory story, but you should wear your seatbelts. In the 10 years I have lived in this rural southern town, there were 2 big murders that got a lot of press. The first was the death of a young mother of 2 who was a manager at our local McDonald's. She went missing and a few weeks later her body was found stuffed in a trash can floating in the lake. My friend from high school and another person found the body. Her husband was having an affair and wanted to marry his side girl, but did not want to lose custody of his kids. So he killed mommy. She was 21. The second one started when police found the dismembered body of a man scattered around a wooded area. They never found the head, supposedly. They arrested 2 guys and one of them was a guy who used to hit on me at work. I worked in a grocery store bakery, and he was a big guy. When I say big, I mean big. Pushing 500 pounds easily. So, back when I was in high school, some senior had a birthday party. This party was at a club that lost its liquor license, so you could be there if you were under 21. Well, it also wasn't in the best part of town. Some guys who were of not the best moral character showed up, and one apparently had either started harassing some guy's girlfriend or had grabbed her butt. I don't know the specifics. I wasn't there and was several years younger than them. Well, the boyfriend started telling the guy to back off. They got into it, and another guy stepped between them, told them to just walk away. Well, poor moral character pulled a knife out, slashed peacekeeper's neck, and stabbed boyfriend in the arm. I found out about it on the news the next morning. Came in Monday and basically every teacher just said frick this, I'm not teaching. Except one, of course, because she was an enormous bee. The kid had a brother in my grade too. He ended up just completely skipping class for the rest of the year and the school pretty much let him because his brother was killed. I'm not sure what became of the brother, but the guy who stabbed the kid I believe is currently doing time for it. I live in a small town, so this was pretty big news. When I was in elementary school, one of the roads to the school had trees lined up on both sides. A horrible car accident happened and a little girl in the car was killed on impact. When the police came to investigate, the car was crashed into one of the trees, and the dead girl's blood was covered on the tree. When I was a kid, there was a report of a double murder in my small town. They found the bodies in the deep freeze of a Captain D's. Couple from my high school, a year or two behind me. I was in the class with their siblings, now in their late 30s and married. Marriage is falling apart. He has moved out. She lives in the suburban home with the kids. She starts a relationship with a co-worker, even posting tropical vacation pics with her new boyfriend. One day, the jealous husband goes to the home of the ex-wife of the new boyfriend, kidnaps her, brings her to his wife's house, kills them both, tries to make it look like the boyfriend's ex killed his wife. Jealous husband is instantly suspected and taken into custody and eventually convicted. When I was in middle school, a kid in my homeroom was strangled by his dad. The father then went on the run, but in reality had offed himself in a remote location hours after he did it. There was really vicious series of battles with the Native Americans around my city, culminating in the execution of 5 native chiefs and about 1,000 captured horses. Not one single mention of it is ever made. They still call the place Hangman's Valley, and then pick any famous serial killer and they probably passed through or were born here. We're like the serial rapist and murderer capital of America. Small, idyllic artsy town in a West Coast state. A kid in his young 20s was walking home from his grocery store job and was beheaded on a walking path with what cops think was a machete. They never found the killer or a motive. It's still chilling to think about. Someone started putting up missing person posters around my neighborhood saying the man was last seen in a grey hoodie. His family lived up the road from me and I had never met him, but people told me he was really nice. 2 weeks later his body was found butchered and dumped in the river down the road at this park. 2 days later someone put a homemade bomb in my mailbox. Probably an unrelated incident, but it scared the crap out of me. A circus elephant went insane, killed her trainer, and got loose. She ran through the streets of my city for around half an hour before the police shot her down. Well, this is the only case here that I side with the killer, the elephant, not the police. This is more of a tragedy, but a man was walking down the steps at the local church holding his baby daughter, and he tripped. He fell on her and crushed her. Small town of about 4,000 people. One of our police officers shot and killed his wife, then himself, with their 2-year-old daughter in the home. He called his wife's teenage son after he killed her to apologize. They had only been married a year, and the police force had helped him with his proposal. There was a lot of crap afterward from both police families, because she had told her family she was leaving him because of abuse and that she felt the police force would protect him. Home of the Casablanca 5-6. That led to victim blaming for the sake of protecting a rich family and the town's tourism. It's truly disgusting, and if you bring it up you're hushed because there is no need to talk about the past and we should leave it alone. Which story do you want? We had people kill 2 gay men in their own bed. Same one set fire to a synagogue in Sacramento. A teenage girl is still missing 20 years later and only one person knows where she is buried, but the guy wasn't pinned by the murder. 2 children found dead in a storage shed and the third one survived. A group of 8 people ran an ad on Facebook for meeting people, and those who responded were kidnapped, robbed, tasered. I knew one of the juveniles since I work with incarcerated kids. I can go on, unfortunately. There was a house near a subdivision that was boarded up, and not many people knew why. Turns out the house was condemned by the police many years back because of a murder. It had also been on surveillance. Anyone going near would be instantly arrested, because the house was found to be used as a common rape murder other stuff by some wannabe gang. A woman lived in some apartments with her newborn daughter a couple of years back. Her boyfriend and father of her baby was a violent convict who was in and out of jail and had problems with substance abuse that ultimately caused her to break up with him for good. I guess the stresses of being a single mom got to her and she started seeing him again after she found out he was apparently doing well and wanted to rekindle the relationship with him. She made arrangements to have her boyfriend watch their baby while she went out to work, and the boyfriend showed up high on M or coke and started ruthlessly beating the crap out of her. After he basically beat her to a pulp, he took the baby into the bathroom and raped it to death while the mom laid on the floor unable to do anything about it. Afterwards a manhunt happened that lasted a couple of days. The boyfriend was eventually caught and died a couple of months later after getting jumped and shanked by some inmates after they found out what he did. The mom survived. The albino lady of Rochester Cemetery. The story goes that there is this woman who haunts a local cemetery during the night. Legend says she is a pale woman. There have been a few reported sightings but nothing substantial has ever been found. In Canada, Ontario, Peterborough, a couple days after the Paris attacks, a group of people burned down a Muslim church mosque. I was watching TV and heard firecrackers going off. A few minutes later, I see neighbors standing around outside. The sound turned out to be the police shooting my neighbor. He had been depressed since his eldest son died in a motorcycle accident and he chased his son and wife around with a shotgun. Police shot him after he shot at them. He died later in the hospital. An entire family was murdered by the daughter's ex-boyfriend. The household consisted of dad, his girlfriend, his kids, one son, one daughter, and the daughter's baby. In the middle of the night, the baby's father broke in and beat the whole family to death with a baseball bat, except the baby. Then he took the baby and set the house on fire. The only other survivor was a teenage friend of the son who was sleeping over. He heard all of the commotion and jumped out a window. He was left dealing with the speculations that maybe he and the son could have overpowered the murderer to stop the carnage had he not fled. After Labor Day, a well-liked family of 5 had not been seen at work or school, so there was a wellness check done on them. A dog greeted the officers, and the kids and wife were dead in their bedrooms, and the father was dead with a shotgun in his hand. He killed them all. The wife heard him and tried to call 911, and he shot her before she could. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.